Hello. I'm so glad to be here with y'all from the office. I am so sorry we couldn't do this in person, but COVID, I think COVID actually got a lot of the people here in the staff, so we were pretty short-handed. But hopefully this won't be too painful. We'll try to keep it short because these presentations tend to be better in person than not in person. So I'll try to keep it very short. So the other day at our first reconciliation class, I had the kids. I asked them a question: what do you receive from God's mercy? They just yell from the top of their lungs, the joy of His forgiveness. I think the greatest thing that you can communicate to your kid, and even sometimes to your spouse, because I still know adults that are afraid of confession, is like, what are you receiving? You're receiving mercy. And what's the effect of that mercy? What it ought to be? The joy of His forgiveness and living in and from that place of forgiveness. Because whatever has been forgiven, when the heart is truly contrite and repentant, meaning that you're detached from sin, you're detached from the anger, you're detached from whatever it is that was gripping your heart, you're able to experience that joy because we have the freedom to see ourselves as God sees us, as beloved daughters and sons of the Father. And so, a great exercise, I bought these, the office bought these for all the families, and it's age appropriate and it helps them with their examination of conscience. And not only that, but it also gives like 7 steps to make a good confession. And in the back, you have all the things that you need to practice with the kids when they go into confession. Because I think part of what kind of holds back this joy is the fear of not knowing. And so if you have a couple of practice rounds with them, especially helping them make a good a good examination of conscience, that'd be a really awesome thing. So an awesome exercise. I'm a coffee lover, and I'm gonna assume that all of you are coffee lovers as well. Is buy a white filter, coffee filter, and with an erasable marker, have the kids, as they're doing their examination of conscience, write their sin onto the white coffee filter. And in that moment, as you're helping them through this process, be gentle, be kind, receive them well, because grace builds on nature. And part sometimes why we can't receive that joy of God's forgiveness is because sometimes we can't receive the joy from the forgiveness from our own mothers and fathers, because in the way that it's either communicated because the punishment is either too heavy or we're never punished. And so having like justice and mercy, they work side by side. You can't adjust punishment is also an act of mercy because it's correcting the person and disposing them to do the right thing in the future. And so by doing this process of helping your kid and tenderly and gently and kindly receiving them and helping them do the examination and writing down on the coffee filter, have a bowl of warm water next to it. So in that moment, tell tell them to take the and submerge the coffee filter into it, and tell them to focus on how all their sins just float away because that's God's grace. It's so abundant. And then when they lift back up and it dries out, they can see that it's white. Because that's the grace of this. That's the reality that takes place within confession. We go in like with heavy hearts and we come out with hearts expanded and open to receiving God's love and be able to love God's people. And I think that one of the things that is sorely missed in the church today is the joy of His forgiveness. Because if we truly receive God's forgiveness, we're going to be able to give that to others. And it begins at the home. It's like, and I want you to sort of reflect on how you receive your children's shortcomings. Is it received with love and tenderness and kindness? Because the way you receive them, it's going to impact the way that they're going to receive God's love as well and His mercy. And so this is an examination for you parents as well. And I'm not talking down to you because I have to do it myself. Every time when I wake up, I do an examination of conscience and kind of try to gauge like where my heart is and the things that I need to let go. And knowing where I am, I'm not going to react to situations, but I'll be able to respond. And if I do react, always be quick and ready to say I'm sorry, but then also to amend. For example, Kathy Newsbaum and I, we got into a little tiff because I wasn't keeping the schedule because we are having a hard time communicating that. So what did I do? I apologized. And then I'm like, okay, let's grab a day where the both of us sit down every 2 weeks and we kind of give everything that we need. I'll give you everything that you need in order to put it on the schedule. And that was really helpful. And that was like the communication. There's that forgiveness, and now we have the joy because that's something that we don't have to worry about anymore is that miscommunication. So that's something really small, but these are little ways that we can sort of look at our lives and say, it's like sometimes it's like, I'm the problem. I need to let go of things, and I need to let go of my own predispositions, because if I'm always so attached to myself, how can I be able to give myself to others? Because I have to be able to receive them, and sometimes receiving them is receiving parts that they need from me that I don't particularly like to exercise in my own life. But that openness and that sense of repentance and contriteness, it leads to our flourishing, and it leads to better communication, which it leads to a greater understanding of God's love for us communicated through others. So you should be getting these in your notebooks, and take the time to pray with them as well, in going through this. This is a really wonderful resource, and if done properly, it can literally change the way your kid is going to experience his first reconciliation. Thank you.